This is the case of Maybelle Mahone. If you want to know more, please continue watching.
You are watching Roll a Mile in My Shoes TV.
On the morning of December 5th, 1956, B.T. Dukes, a 71-year-old white retired farmer from Molena, Georgia, a small farming town 60 miles south of Atlanta, drove to Maybelle Mahone's house 2 miles outside of Molena. Dukes had worked with Molena, a 30-year-old black mother of 6, at a plantation near Molena, and sometimes went by the Mahone house to talk to them, according to then Pike County Sheriff J. Astor Riggins. Now, if you all have been watching my channel for a minute, sometimes y'all know my mind or my thinking can go real far to the left sometimes. And sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. And I hope this is one of those times where I'm wrong. But I'm going to go left real quick and then I'm going to come back to the actual subject. But my opinion here is, I don't know what kind of car he was driving or whatever, but I don't believe a white man in the 1950s, unless you just, a real good, decent person. And not saying that there weren't people like that back then, but there were few, far, and in between. I don't believe that you, being a white man, gonna take time out of your day, whether you retired or not, and whether you've been knowing this family or this woman for all these years or not, gonna take time out of your day when you could be playing golf or God knows what else you could be doing on that particular day, to drive 60 miles from wherever you were, which was probably his home, to this woman's house to just sit on the porch, and which they said later drink whiskey and talk to this woman. Now, I believe that they probably, had some kind of relationship, whether it be flirting innocently, and she probably, was, sweet talking to him to kind of get a little extra money on the side, to help pay her bills, or whether she, promised him, some intimacy or cookie, whatever you want to call it, and probably intended never to give him what she promised him, or whether they actually had a mutual friends with benefits type deal, and this is how he would end up at her house most of the time. Now, on this particular day, her husband had just left for work by the time he got there. Now, I don't know, if he, the husband was always there when this man came to the house. Now, this is why I say I believe that they had some type of, intimate dealings with each other. Because who gonna drive 60 miles to sit on somebody's porch, unless that's your family, and drink whiskey and just talk to them? So that's why I believe they had some kind of, other dealings with each other. And her husband, he probably knew about it, probably didn't. Or he probably didn't know about it, which I'm pretty sure he probably didn't, because if he did, he probably wouldn't approve. But getting back to the story. Now, as I had stated earlier, Sheriff J. Esther Riggins said that Mr. Dukes spent the unseasonably warm day sitting on the porch and drinking whiskey with Miss Mahone, whose husband had left by then. Now, that goes back to what I just said because, I'm pretty sure, her husband wasn't there most of the time because he had left right, before Mr. Man had got there, and he shot her in front of her young children. Now, when the police officer or the police chief asked him, say, Mr. Dukes, why did you, shoot Miss Mahone? His answer was, he sassed her. Now, if most people ain't familiar with Southern slang or terminology, that the old people used to use, that means that he was talking back to her, and, as some people would say, giving her lip, and, he ain't like that, I guess, being a white man. Now, the story goes that, when her two sons came home who were older, they had come home from school, and they said that, they were laying in the, one of the kids' rooms. And when the two sons got home, after Mr. Dukes had shot her and said that she sassed him and it triggered him, it was a trial that was held and they convicted him. And this happened. The trial was held in Pike County. That's another small, town in Georgia. And then they had a retrial, and it had an unexpected outcome. But in 2006, 50 years after Miss Maybelle Mahone was killed, the United States Attorney General Alberto R. Gonzalez announced the Civil Rights Cold Case Initiative with the pledge to re-examine this case he actually examined this case along with, more than 120 unsolved civil rights case killings, because, the 50s and so on were the civil rights era back then, and there unfortunately was a lot of killings. And since Mr. Dukes said that Miss Mahone had sassed him, this killing appeared to be racially motivated, and that's why they were able to reopen it along with 120 other cases of the civil rights era. Now, as the story goes, the FBI got involved, and I guess when they get involved, this is supposed to make things, move along a little quicker. But as the story goes, or which is his account in the sheriff's report, goes at around 4:30 in the afternoon on December 5th, Mahones' sons Walter Lee, 11, and Robert Lee returned home from school. When they walked into the house, they found Dukes and their mother in Walter Lee's bedroom. Dukes was laying on the hearth by the fireplace, and Mahone was laying on the bed. Walter Lee would later say, my mama said, he would later say, my mama was laying on the bed. She told him to leave, and he wouldn't leave, and he kept laying down on the fireplace. Then he went to leave, but he didn't leave. She kept on telling him to leave, and he still wouldn't leave, and my mama told me to make him leave, and he still wouldn't leave, Walter Lee recalled. Now, going back to what I said earlier, why would you, a married woman in the 1950s, no less, have a white man that's not your husband in your house with your kids by yourself, and y'all are in one of your son's rooms, even though y'all laying in separate places in the room? I'm pretty sure at some point in time when y'all first went into that room, y'all weren't laying in separate places. Y'all were laying on top of each other. For those who catch my drift, you get where I'm going with this. So, they were doing what grown folks do. And that's where the intimate exchange came into play, probably. And so by the time, the two kids got home, they were finished doing what they were doing. And she probably wanted him to leave, and he wouldn't leave. Now, the rest of the report states the situation deteriorated quickly. The young Walter Lee later told a Pike County Superior Court jury during Duke's trial for murdering Mahone. Finally, Lee testified. Dukes left the house and went to his car. He returned with his single-barrel shotgun, a Winchester Ranger 12 gauge. The Georgia Bureau of Investigations later determined, and put a shell in it. Walter Lee told the court Mahone headed to the back door of the house. Dukes called to her from the side of his car and said he wasn't going nowhere. Walter Lee testified. Dukes fired his shotgun through the back door, striking Mahone in the neck. Mahone fell bleeding excessively from her shoulder and neck. Dukes drove away. Now, what person in their right mind, I don't care if it's your friend or whoever, after y'all done spent time together, one of y'all gonna get tired of the other, and the other one gonna say leave. The other one probably hesitated a little bit because they want to stay a little bit longer. But what person unless it's some kind of intimate situation going on there, let's erase the, fact of who was, black and who was white for a second. Who gonna stay at somebody's house that long and then get mad at them when one of the other, the other person whose house it is says, okay, I think it's time for you to go, and then gonna go to your car and get your gun and shoot them? That sounds like you got a little too attached, Mr. Man. Like, not to, make fun of the situation, but it couldn't have been that good for you to kill this woman because you ain't want to leave. Because, you, even if it was an intimate situation, you already knew what the deal and the routine was. And even back then, that, I think that was still a thing. Certain people knew how to play their role, whether you were the side woman or the side dude. And apparently he got a little too caught up in the situation and the goings-ons that were going on, and he didn't want to play his role no more. And so she probably felt like, okay, you gotta go, because he probably was laying there, probably getting a little too attached and all in his feelings. And, she didn't want to deal with that, probably, like most people don't. Now, not making light of this situation, I'm just saying, and with a lot of these cases being a little too heavy, sometimes you got to add humor in there. So in no way am I, making light of the situation or trying to disrespect anybody, the victim or the offender in this story. So nobody please take it that way. I'm just, adding a little humor into the situation and also giving my opinion to this story. About 25 minutes after Dukes shot Mahone, Georgia State Trooper Billy Mitchell received a call from the Pike County Sheriff's Office in Zebulon about a shooting at a colored home. in West Molena. Now, this shows you how much, some people care about the lives of people of color back then, because they referred to it as a colored home. I mean, why couldn't they just say a house or a home of a, shooting victim or whatever you want to call it? Why did you have to throw, race into it? And I think this is what made them, move so slow. But anyway, Mitchum and another trooper drove to the home of Mr. and Mrs. J.B. Lawrence in Molena. They were then directed to the Mahone, residence. When Mitchum arrived, he went into the home and found the body of a colored female, fully clothed, laying in the rear of the house in the hallway. She was laying with the left side of her face down. There was a puddle of blood around the head, and the back door was closed, and her feet were halfway or a foot away from the back door. Mahones' sons, Robert Lee and Walter Lee, told the troopers, Mr. Lawrence, that Mr. Dukes had been over during the day. So Mitchum and Lawrence drove to Dukes' house, where Dukes was eating dinner at the kitchen table with his wife when Mitchum arrived. Mitchum placed Dukes under arrest and drove him to the Mahones residence to wait for the coroner, Herman D. Jones, and the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, Agent G.W. Smith, to arrive. Now, I'm a little confused. I know they did a lot of stuff different back then, but why in the hell would you drive a suspect who just shot this woman to death because her sons told you that he had been over earlier that day and she wanted him to leave and he wouldn't leave? Why the hell would you bring this man back to the scene of the crime? You must want this man to see the outcome of his actions, which I'm pretty sure he already knew the outcome of his actions, because if he, didn't, he wouldn't drove away, and he wouldn't have, pulled the trigger and shot this woman to begin with if he didn't intend to kill her. But yet again, why would you take a suspect back to the scene of the crime? But I guess they did things a little bit different back then. On the drive to the Mahones' house, Mitchum spoke to Dukes about the shooting. Dukes told Mitchum that the two boys had come home from school around 4 and the deceased sicked them on him, and she made them throw rocks at him and push him down, throw sticks at him. He told the boys to quit and they failed to do so. He walked out to his automobile, got out a shotgun, and Maybelle came on the back porch and began to sass him. She told him wasn't nobody there scared of him, and he fired a shot, Mitchum testified. Now, they have to, even though he said this, they have to know that this man was lying through the crack of his teeth. Because if this was the case, she would have been found laying outside, which she was not. Her body was found in the hallway in the rear of the house, with her body, a foot or so or two away from the back door, and the back door was closed. Now, if she had came out on the porch and said all this and he fired a shot, why was she laying in the hallway in the back of the house by the back door with it being closed? Make it make sense, sir, which he did not in this case. And that is why they later retried him, and, the outcome was what it was. And I think, like I said earlier, he just got a little too carried away in his feelings about the situation, and he didn't know how to play his role, and she was like, I can't deal with this. You gotta leave. And he didn't want to leave. So he did what he did. And that's how you have, this case after, all these years, it was reopened. In the end, I kind of feel like, in a way she got justice, Miss Mahone, but in a way I feel like she didn't get justice because Mr. Dukes, he actually was sent to a mental hospital in a little small town near Molena, which is called Milledgeville, Georgia, is where mental patients would go back then, to get, I guess, psychiatric or mental treatment or to serve out their sentences in certain cases like this one. But at any rate, he went there and was ordered to not be released, until his, sentence was, served, or unless other, things came about. That was the judge's verdict. But I feel like he should have gone to prison because he showed no remorse during this trial or the retrial, and he felt like he didn't do anything wrong. But, I have to say, sir, you killed this woman, so apparently you did do something wrong because you took another human's life because you didn't want to leave this woman's house that day, but you tried to, blame it on her boys and said she sicked them on you and told them to throw sticks and rocks at you, which is, untrue. And, it's bad enough that you didn't show any, remorse, but I'm glad the judge did, lock you away somewhere. And, even though the case was reopened in 2009, they closed the case either because they were satisfied with the verdict, or because, Mr. Dukes was then, deceased, by then, like, both individuals in this case, probably were, well, we know they were. And, at least some kind of justice or something was served. But I feel like he, should have went to prison for the rest of his life instead of a mental hospital, because I feel like he got off easy, But, that's the 1950s for you. So, hey, what are you going to do? But if you guys like this video, as always, please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys on the next one.